So over the years, I've been very fortunate to try a number of different cameras, but this one right here is probably the most unique. Let's talk about it. Big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. We'll talk about them a little bit later on. So if you are new here, myself and Hasselblad go way back in around 2017, maybe 2018. They sent me the original X1D to use. At the time, I thought it was the most amazing camera ever. Earlier this year, they gave me the opportunity to use the X2D, and now they've allowed me to try this, the 907X and CFV100C combo. And today I want to talk about this camera, share my experience with it, and give some honest feedback on this camera because there's been so many videos about it as of late. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is just what makes this camera so unique in today's camera market in terms of design. Obviously, it looks beautiful. The chrome accents just give it this high class look. Another really cool thing about this camera is the fact that the design mimics old Hasselblad film cameras, meaning when you flip the screen up, you get the same top-down effect that you would get with old Hasselblad film cameras. So the design itself of this camera is a great homage to the past of Hasselblad, and personally for me, I think it's the most tastefully and well executed retro vibe camera with modern tech involved. But none of that really matters if the photos are not good, and I'm gonna be honest, when I first started using this for photography, I struggled a lot. The first shock to the system was just the shape of this camera in general. I'm used to using, normal cameras. I'm used to doing fast-paced street photography, and having a camera where the menu is something you have to operate as a touchscreen, and also having your shutter be down here and having this dial be one of your main controls, and that's really it, threw me off. I'm gonna be completely honest. The photos I made were not great because I was treating this camera exactly how I would treat any other camera, doing fast-paced street and city photography. This camera is definitely a stripped back photography experience, meaning it's very minimal and it's not something you can necessarily just grab and go with. There is sort of a learning curve getting used to how to use this camera. But I will say that the smaller size actually was really convenient for street and city stuff because I could just slide it in and out of my hoodie, which y'all know is something that I personally love with all my cameras. So after this initial struggle, I brought the camera into the studio to do some mock product photography just to get more acquainted. And this is where I started to understand this camera more. The first thing that I noticed was this is a camera that you need to be intentional with. Because so much is stripped away from the camera and it has more of a minimal design, you need to be thoughtful about your composition, thoughtful about your settings. Personally, I switched the camera over to manual and I started to get a better result with my exposures. I typically use aperture priority, and with this camera you can get away with that, but I found manual to be much better, and when you're intentional about your settings and your shots, they're obviously going to be better. So maybe that's just me getting lazy over the years, but this camera really forced me back into a thoughtful mindset when it came to my photography. And of course, in this studio test, I noticed how insane the detail was from the 100 megapixel sensor. When you punch in on this photo of my Tudor Black Bay, the detail you get is crazy even at this extreme crop. And this example also gave me a lot of respect for people who do jewelry photography with all the detail of medium format. This photo took a lot of retouching, and this image is unedited as well. Now, speaking of editing, one thing that I did notice is if you're using this camera and editing your photos in Lightroom, I found you get better editing results when you use the camera profile that Adobe is trying to replicate with the Hasselblad versus something like Adobe Color and Adobe Standard. I just found the colors and everything worked better using this camera profile. So keep that in mind if you're someone using these cameras. So with this new point of view in mind, I took the camera out on a rainy morning and treated it like a Hasselblad film camera. I wasn't worried about social media, wasn't worried about speed. I wanted to be intentional with the photography that I was making. And I noticed a few things in doing this. The first was on a tripod, this camera really shines. Using it handheld and at a waist level is completely fine. You can navigate the menus with no issue, but when you put the camera on a tripod, there's just something that feels so at home about this, and it really helps you slow down and think about the photos you're making. And something about this camera just adds to that. I can't exactly explain it. You would just have to try it out for yourself or try a Hasselblad film camera to really know what I mean. But I loved this slowed down approach, and it allowed me to actually make less photos as well. That's not an issue with the camera itself. You have 1 terabyte of internal storage, so you don't even need a memory card. But when you bring the photos home and you put them on your computer or your hard drive, not having a bunch of images that are this large from this medium format sensor will save you space and memory and the whole headache of storing your photos. So being intentional was great, and I was really happy with the photo set that I came up with. Now, I did end up making a few other photos which weren't the most artistic thing ever, just me on a bridge and my Apple Watch, but I was really happy with how those images looked as well. The detail, the dynamic range, the color, it's exactly what you would expect from a camera that is this expensive. Now, I do want to touch on the price of this camera and who it's really for, but before I do that, I want to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace. If you're a photographer investing your money into camera gear like this Hasselblad and you don't have a place to showcase your work outside of social media, you are making a huge mistake. Luckily, Squarespace is the easiest place to host your portfolio for a number of different reasons. The first is the fact that Squarespace is known for their award-winning drag and drop templates. They have tools like Fluid Engine that literally allow you to drag things around on the page. The second reason is now Squarespace has AI tools to help you build and get inspiration for your site, making it easier than ever for someone with no web design experience to have a beautiful site to showcase their work. And the third reason is that y'all are in luck, and my favorite video on this channel about photography business is about how I built my portfolio. Now, I'm going to link that video in the website resources tab in the description, but on top of that, Squarespace allows you to do things like email marketing to directly contact people in your audience. You can sell things like courses or products, both digital and physical, and now Squarespace allows you to accept payments with Squarespace Payments. Now, you can go to squarespace.com/EvanRamp to start a free trial and use code EvanRamp to save 10% when you sign up. So go to squarespace.com/EvanRamp, start a free trial, watch that video linked in the website resources tab on building a portfolio, and then when you're ready to send your site live, use code EvanRamp to save 10% at checkout. Big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. So who is this camera for? This camera is a pure photography experience. That's the only way I can describe it. And the camera itself and the way it functions gives you a level of inspiration. I found myself wanting to go out and replicate one of my favorite William Eggleston books, and these photos were very different from what I normally do. They were minimal, square style images, but something about this camera made me say, hey, I think that's something I want to try out today. Now, you can get away with using this in more standard situations, like going out and making car photos, or even going out and doing city and street photos if you're more familiar with the camera, because it is definitely slowed down. But in my opinion, this camera is designed for someone who wants a pure photography experience and a camera that inspires them while also getting the absolute maximum they can in terms of image quality and photography capabilities. This camera makes beautiful photos. There's just no way around it. I love the images I made in this video, and it's something that I definitely want to use more and use in a more thoughtful way and try to make photos that I can print and potentially put in my next book. Now, when it comes to what you're paying for this, that's where people always have a lot of debate. Some people say this camera is very expensive, but for me, I think you're getting what you're paying for. At its current price point, this camera provides a unique experience you can't get anywhere else, and you're getting that top of the line photography image quality. There are other cameras out there that do not perform as well as this, and they don't have all the features this has. For example, there's very expensive cameras out there that don't even have autofocus, and no one bats an eye at people buying those cameras. This Hasselblad, to me, is actually at the perfect price point for what you get. Now, the individuals who I think will get the most out of this are going to be individuals who want this slowed down classic Hasselblad feel to their digital photography. People who do landscape photos or cityscape photos, photos where you want to remember the experience of making the pictures as much as the pictures themselves. Individuals who do a lot of at the waist level photography where it's slow, they're waiting for a subject to cross into their scene. They will love this, but that's not everyone, and I think that's the reason why cameras videos like this can get a little bit controversial. There's an element to these cameras that is specialized. They're for a specific group of people, and in the case of the 907X and CFV100C, I think that group of people is individuals who just love the experience of making pictures. But with that said, I would love to know y'all's thoughts, so drop a comment with your thoughts on the Hasselblad CFV100C combo down below. Big thank you to Hasselblad for sending me this to try out. I'll go ahead and drop a link in the description to the camera directly so you can learn more about it. Feel free to let me know your favorite photo in the comments. Subscribe, like, do all that stuff. So many of y'all watch these videos and aren't subscribed, so make sure you subscribe for the next video, and I'll catch y'all then.